Hey friends, I hope this video finds you well. Again, my name is Tyler and I'm on staff here at North Decatur United Methodist Church. And today we are reflecting on the 15th chapter of the book of Acts, verses 12 through 21. The very quick summary of what's happening in these passages is that the leadership of the early church is gathering together in Jerusalem, and they're having a conversation about what do we do, how do we respond to the growing, spreading nature of the early Christian church. Remember, the Christian church really began within the Jewish faith. It began with the stories, the narratives, the spaces of the Jewish faith, and then began to spread to non-Jewish persons into non-Jewish spaces. Non-Jewish persons are often referred to in Scripture as Gentile. So that's thrown around quite a bit in this passage. And so the question really became, in the life of the church, right? Some people were putting very high bars on people who were not Jewish, and other people were not. And so they were basically asking, what do we do? And the guiding argument that we really get into in verses 12 through 21 is the argument that becomes the guiding movement for the future of the church. It's the one that everyone listens to and says, yep, I think that is where God is calling us into. That argument has kind of two movements. The first movement is Paul and Barnabas, who testify to what they've experienced out in the field. And that testimony is the testimony that God is meeting the non-Jewish persons, those who are unlike us, where they are. God is there. God seems to cherish them. God is seeming to make this redemptive work present for them. God is empowering the preaching ministry of spreading this good news towards them. God is there. The experiential piece is the testimony of the first movement of the guiding argument. And the second movement is James, and who enters into this discussion and says, yes, to what Paul and Barnabas have been saying, very important. And also, this is not a new thing. And James pulls upon the prophet Amos, who wrote of how the redemptive work, this good news, this covenant that God is establishing, was to go beyond just the Jewish people and was to go to even the Gentiles who are listed by name in Amos as a part of this growing message beyond just the Israelites. So God is meeting them experientially in these spaces, and this is not a new thing. It's in our holy scriptures. The church says yes to what we find in verses 12 through 21. And so they're important to just reflect on, because they're very guiding arguments, at least as the book of Acts talks about them. And so in response to this, we find in the later bit of our little text for today is that the Jerusalem Council says, yes, we're going to write a letter. We're going to send people to them. Really, we should not be putting any bars on persons who are not Jewish from joining the faith. No additional expectations, no additional hurdles. We should give them some warnings. We should guide them and instruct them and kind of help them, share some of the things that we've learned with them, but we shouldn't put additional burdens on them. It's a fascinating scripture and a lot to reflect on. For me personally, you probably have heard me say in past videos the phrase that the gospel, in my understanding, is a bold, inclusive, and relevant gospel. That comes from my time as a student pastor up in the Wicker Park neighborhood in Chicago. But I think our scripture for today that we're reflecting on really hits and accents and fleshes out that inclusive piece, that the gospel that we believe and preach and teach and live out is an inclusive gospel, inclusive of all people and inclusive of even all of creation. This is huge. It's an invitation for us to meet God where God is. One of the interesting dynamics that's happening in this scripture, which is not a laughing matter, but also it's so present in just our humanity is that God is already meeting the Gentiles. And it's the people who are on the inside of this unfolding work who have some hesitations about extending this to people who are unlike them. And it's the institution, as early as it is, of the early church, that has even more hesitations about this inclusive nature of this work and needs to meet by committee and gather together all these delegates to have this conversation. Today, may we just reflect on what does it mean to have a gospel that is inclusive of all persons, to have a gospel in which God is doing the work, in which God is meeting us when we show up to talk with other people. What are the ways in which we share and talk and communicate this faith of ours to other people? And are we making sure that we're not adding additional hurdles or barriers that we are not putting there for ourselves? At the end of the day, what I see when I look at this passage and what I'm reflecting on today is that faith is not so much something to achieve or conquer or to compete in so that way we can be better than others. But this faith, this good news, is a work of the Spirit that's unfolding in our midst, that through God we are invited to participate in and to share freely with other peoples. In what ways are we living out that inclusive gospel today? I hope you're well. Many blessings. Take care.